You are in a farmhouse on the coast. The autumn countryside around you, desolate and bleak. And you know that in the dusk outside, waiting patiently for you, silently watching you, is an enemy from whom there may be no escape. Listen now as Whittier Community Theater brings you Daphne Du Maurier's story, The Birds.
On December the 3rd, the wind changed overnight and it was winter. Until then, the autumn had been mellow, soft. The earth was rich where the plow had turned it. No, I didn't do the plowing, no. My wartime disability had seen to that. They gave me mostly the lighter repair jobs to do in the 3 days of the week that I worked on the farm. Bank to build up, or a gate to mend at the far end of the peninsula, where the sea surrounded the farm on either side. Deborah and I had taken the cottage up here to try again for the sake of the children, and it seemed to be working quite well. I enjoyed my work on the farm, and it was pleasant to pause at midday to eat the lunch that Debbie prepared and brought to me. We'd sit there on the cliff while I ate, and we'd watch the birds.
So many of them, Nat.
Yes, well, the autumn's better than the spring for watching them.
Oh? Why?
Oh, well, in the spring they're content, they're full of purpose, they know where they're going, there's no delay. But then in autumn it's different. The birds that don't migrate seem to follow a pattern of their own.
Pattern?
Great flocks of them here on the peninsula. Restless, uneasy, wheeling, circling, coming to rest and then flying again. The land birds and the gulls down there in the bay, same sort of rhythm in their movements.
They don't really go anywhere. There doesn't seem to be any purpose to it.
No, well, if there is, we don't see it. There's a restlessness. A more restless this year than usual, it seems to me. Do you know this morning that 2 gulls flew so close that they knocked my cap off?
Jill said yesterday, when the school bus let her off, there was quite a few of them overhead, as if they'd been following.
Oh, well, I suppose it means a hard winter. They always seem to know. Perhaps a message comes to them in the autumn. A warning.
About winter?
And about death.
Nat.
Well, I mean, many of them will die. I think they know it. Perhaps they feel they have to spill out their motion before they die. You know, like people who know their time is up and run about stupidly, driving themselves.
I wish you wouldn't talk like that, Nat. That black side of you that stirred up trouble between us before.
Oh, I'm sorry, Debbie. But it's come over me lately as I've watched them. The land birds mingling with the sea birds in sort of a strange, unnatural partnership. Land and sea, life and death. At night it turned colder and the wind strengthened. Around 2 a.m, the sound of it beating against the house woke me up. I lay there with the slow, even breathing of Debbie beside me, and I thought of Jill and Johnny in the room across the hall. We seemed safe, secure. And then I heard it, a tapping on the window. At first I thought it was a loose shutter, and then I realized that it wasn't. I got out of bed and went to the window, opened it. Suddenly, something brushed against my hand. Ah! Jabbed at my knuckles and then was gone, over the roof and behind the cottage.
Nat? What?
It's all right, Debbie. It was a bird. I don't know what kind.
Bird?
Wind must have driven it against the windowsill. My hand's wet with... It's blood. It's a little beggar drew blood.
Go to sleep, Nat.
I must have been frightened and stabbed at me in the dark. Oh, for the love of...
Nat, the window. See to it, it's rattling.
I've already seen to it, Debbie. It's some bird trying to get in.
Well, send them away. I can't sleep with that noise.
Oh, all right. All right. Go on, off with you. What? You little... Stay away from my face. Get up. Get away.
Dear, whatever in the world?
Did you see that? There were half a dozen of them this time. They went for me. They tried to peck my eyes.
Oh, Nat.
I'm not making it up, dear.
What? Well, that's Jill. Go see what's the matter.
Right.
Mommy!
Coming, Jill!
They came flying at me!
Where's Johnny?
Under the blanket!
What is it? What's the matter?
Quick! Get the children out of here.
Birds!
Yes.
The room's full of birds. They're like fish.
Yes, get the children out of here and shut the door, quick! I pushed them out of the room and then I was alone with the birds. I seized a blanket and I used it as a weapon, sweeping it left and right, and I could hear the thud of bodies, but they kept coming at me, jabbing at my hands, my head, trying for my eyes with beaks as sharp as pointed forks. I wrapped the blanket around my head and beat about wildly, blindingly. I don't know how long I fought them. Finally, the beating of wings lessened, and then was still. I unwrapped the blanket from my face. The cold, gray dawn had seeped into the room. The floor was littered with the tiny corpses of the birds. Robins, finches, sparrows, larks. Some had lost feathers in the fight. Others had blood, my blood on their beaks. Sickened, I went to the window. The fierce sea broke harshly in the day, but there was not a bird in sight. Not a sparrow chattered in the hedge, no early thrush or blackbird pecked the grass for worms. There was no sound at all but the east wind and the sea.
Nat?
I'm all right, Debbie.
I didn't know what... You're covered with blood.
Yeah, some of it's the birds. Look.
Oh, there's so many of them.
Yeah, 50. I counted them.
Oh, it's horrible.
Come, my dear. I'll clean the room later when I've got more of a stomach for it.
It must have been ghastly for you.
Are the children all right?
Yes, I put Jill to work making tea. Johnny's in our bed just now asleep. Nat, why?
The birds? What? It must be the weather. The sudden change confused them. It has to be that.
The tea's ready, Mommy.
Oh, good.
Did you drive away the birds?
Yes, they're all gone now, Jill.
I hope they won't come again. Perhaps if we put breadcrumbs for them outside the window, they'll eat that and fly away.
Perhaps, dear.
I've already had breakfast. I better hurry or I'll be late for the school bus.
Bus! Oh, I'll walk with you to the road, Jill.
Yes, I think that would be a good idea.
I'll go get my coat and books.
I didn't want her to walk there alone.
Nat, they wouldn't come back again.
Well, I'll go over to the farm and find out if they've heard anything during the night. You keep all the windows and doors closed, Debbie, just to be on the safe side. Hello? Anyone about?
Hello, Mr. Hawkins.
Is the mister about?
Somewhere's about. But can you tell me where this cold is coming from? Russia? I've never seen such a change, and it's going on the radio, says. Something to do with the Arctic Circle.
Well, we didn't turn on the radio this morning. The fact is we had some trouble during the night.
Aw, Kitty's poorly?
No, not exactly. No, we had some trouble with birds. Why, it sounds absurd, but they flew in the window and attacked us.
Attacked you? Now, Mr. Hawkins.
No, I'm not making up, Mrs. Trigg. There were over 50 dead birds on the floor of the children's bedroom.
Foreign birds?
No. No, the kind you see around here every day.
Really? Well, you ought to ride up and ask the Guardian. They never thought about it.
Hey, morning, Hawkins.
Hello, Mr. Trigg.
Mr. Hawkins been telling about some birds last night.
Oh?
He says they attacked him.
Attacked?
Mm-hmm.
Are you sure?
Quite.
Never heard of a thing like that before. Hungry, maybe? Looking for food?
Mm-hmm.
You, put out some crumbs.
Yes, of course. I'll be up tomorrow as usual. Good morning.
Ordinary birds, he said.
Attacked him. Now, what does he take us for, coming round with a story like that? A strange one he is, with those superior airs. You see the look he gave us when we didn't swallow his story? Attacked him. I think he reads too many of those books.
Oh, Nat, did you find out anything at the farm?
No, the Trig's brilliant advice was to put out some breadcrumbs. Debbie, I looked all around this morning. There's not a single bird inside outdoors.
Where could they have gone?
I don't know.
The Triggs had no trouble last night?
Not only that, they thought I was imagining it. Oh, I heard Trig mention something about my superior airs and reading too many books as I walked away. Nothing's real to those clods until it hits them over the head.
Well, they're nice enough people, Nat. It's just that they're isolated up here.
Well, that's certainly the polite word for it.
I haven't been able to face going into the children's room. Those birds.
Yes, I'll go and clean it up. Well, at least I suppose I could do is give them a decent burial. I dropped the dead birds into a sack and went down to the beach to bury them. The wind was bitter cold. I dug a pit in the sand with my heel and started to empty the sack into it, but the wind caught the birds and whirled them along the shore. There was something ugly in the sight, but the tide would take them when it turned. I looked out at the crusted breakers, and then I saw them, the gulls, out there, riding the seas. Thousands, tens of thousands. They rose and fell in the trough of the sea like a mighty fleet at anchor, waiting for the turn of the tide. Waiting. They stretched as far as my eyes could reach. They covered the sea. I started up the steep path home, almost running. Someone had to know of this. Someone should be told, but who? And then, as I opened the front door, I saw Debbie beside the radio listening.
Destruction, damage, and even attacking individuals. It is thought that the Arctic airstream is causing the birds to migrate south in immense numbers, and that intense hunger may drive them to attack human beings. Householders are warned to see to their windows, doors, and chimneys, and to take all precautions for the safety of their children. Further bulletins will be issued later. In other news,
They've been repeating it every few minutes since you left.
Well, perhaps now those empty-headed idiots up at the farm will know that I was...
Nat, you sound almost glad.
Oh, don't start that rot, Debbie. It's just that when people with half a brain try to say that...
Can't you forget that superior attitude of yours even now?
Don't use that word with me, Debbie. I'm sick of it.
So am I, Nat. So am I. You... Oh, I'm sorry, dear. I'm sorry. This thing has just made me a little nervy, I guess.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry too, my dear.
Nat, one of the bulletins said that the birds seem to be waiting. For what?
I don't know. They said they were hungry.
What are you doing?
I'm getting a hammer. I'm going to get some boards and see to the windows and doors as they told you to.
Do you think they could break in with the windows shut? The sparrows and robins and such? Well, how could they?
I wasn't thinking about the smaller birds. I was thinking about the gulls.
The gulls?
Debbie, have you ever been close enough to get a good look at a gull's beak? There must be 100,000 of them out there, just riding the sea, waiting. The rest of the morning I worked upstairs, boarding up the bedroom windows, and I wondered whether they would take these precautions up at the farm. I doubted it. Probably a big joke to the Triggs. But, according to the radio, it was no joke. At first, some of the bulletins had been lighter in tone, but as the morning wore on, the concern in the announcer's voice became more and more apparent. Well, after I finished upstairs, I went down and boarded up the lower windows.
What they ought to do is call the army out and shoot the birds. That'd soon scare them off.
Debbie, how are we out for food?
Now, Nat? Whatever's next.
Well, never mind. I mean, what have we got in the pantry?
Well, shopping is tomorrow, you know that. I don't keep uncooked food hanging around. It goes bad. But I can put some things in tomorrow.
Tomorrow. It's 3 in the afternoon and it's almost dark.
What? Well, yes. The sky, it looks so heavy. Nat, what's the matter? You've gone white.
Look, the tide's turned. The gulls.
They've risen.
Circling over the sea. Not a sound from them.
Nat?
I'm going for Jill. I'll wait for her at the bus stop. You keep Johnny inside and keep the door shut. Outside I looked for a weapon, but a hoe was all I could find. Then I went to the top of the hill and waited. The surf was booming. Down below, a smudge rose behind the clay hills, and in the distance it widened, divided, and spread north, south, east, west. It was a vast cloud of birds, and it passed close by, heading inland, up country. They had no business with the people here on the peninsula. Brooks, crows, jackdaws, magpies, birds that usually preyed upon those smaller species. But this afternoon, they were on some other mission. They were heading for the towns, I thought. They knew what they had to do. We don't matter so much for them here. The gulls would serve for us. The others go to the towns. Finally, the bus came. When Jill got off, I took her by the hand.
What's the hoe for, Daddy?
I just brought it along. Come on now, darling. Let's go home. It's cold. No dawdling, no hanging about.
I want to play a bit in the lane.
Not tonight now. Come on now, no dawdling.
Look, Daddy. Look over there. Look at the gulls. They're flying in from the sea. They're so quiet.
Yes. Do hurry, darling.
Where are they flying to?
Oh, up country, I dare say, where it's warmer.
Don't go so fast. I can't keep up.
Hurry.
The gulls. They're circling. It looks like they're waiting for something.
For a signal. An order.
What?
Nothing. Come on, dear. Faster.
Can't. Go faster.
Wait. There's Trig in his two-seater.
Well, looks as though we're in for some fun, Hawkins. Have you heard the news? Everyone's gone bird crazy. Talking of nothing else. I'm gonna take a crack at them with my gun.
Could you run Jill home first?
Oh, yes, of course. No room for you too, I'm afraid.
Oh, that's all right. Just get Jill home. Get in, Jill, darling.
Would you like to come shooting with me?
Oh, no thanks. Have you boarded your windows?
No, a lot of nonsense. They like to scare you on the radio.
I would board them if I were you.
Oh, go on. You're crazy. Well, see you in the morning. I'll give you a gold breakfast.
I watched Trig drive toward the cottage and then I followed on foot. The sound made me look up. The gulls were approaching. The order had been given and the farm was their target. The black-backed gulls were leading and the bigger birds, the gannets, the terns. And suddenly, one of them dove at me. Missed! Rose to dive again. And then came the others, 6, 7, a dozen. I dropped the hoe and covered my head with my arms and ran toward the cottage. They kept coming at me from the air with beaks and beating wings. Each stab of a swooping beak tore at my flesh. I had to keep them from my eyes. And with each dive, they became bolder, and they thought less of themselves. When they missed, they crashed, bruised and broken onto the ground. And as I ran, I stumbled, kicking them in front of me. And now their aim got better. Closer to my eyes. Closer. And then I reached the door of the cottage. Let me in! It's Nat! Let me in! Then above me, I saw the gannet, poised against the sky for his dive. The gulls drew back. Only the huge gannet, its wings folded suddenly to his body, and it dropped like a stone at me. The door opened up. I flung myself indoors.
Good Lord, what was that?
A gannet. He'd have split my skull.
Better now?
Yes, thanks. You're quite the wound dresser. Where are the children?
In the other room. I didn't want them to see you that way.
No, of course.
Your hands are the worst.
I'll be all right. We better all sleep here in the kitchen tonight. I'll bring down the mattresses.
All right. I'll pick something tasty for supper. We can prepare a
Wait.
picnic.
Hush. Listen.
That sound. What is it?
The birds. They're crowding against the outside of the house. They're trying to find a way in.
Nat?
No, Debbie, they can't get in. I tell you, they cannot get in. The boards will hold.
For how long? How long?
Oh, stop that. Here, I'll turn on the radio, okay? That'll drown out the sound. There. That's better.
Yes. Anything so I can't hear that horrible racket.
It's only the food that worries me, Debbie. Now, I've noticed that the birds come in with the tide, but the tide will go out about 9 tonight. We should have a lull of about 6 hours. I could slip out during that time and go to the farm, see that they can give us something.
We interrupt this program to bring you a special announcement. A national emergency was proclaimed at 4 o'clock this afternoon.
Nat!
Measures are being taken to safeguard the lives and property of the population, but it must be understood that these are not easily to effect immediately, due to the unforeseen and unparalleled nature of the present crisis. It is absolutely imperative that everyone remain indoors until further notice. The birds, in vast numbers, are attacking everything in sight. The population is asked to remain calm and not to panic. There will be no further transmission from any broadcasting station until 7 a.m. tomorrow.
It's like this all over then. All over.
Debbie, about supper, let's forget it. Let's just all try and get some sleep.
Nat? Wake up.
What?
Nat, they're back again.
Well, what time is it?
A little after 3.
Oh, the tide's come in again.
There's been a queer smell the last few minutes, rather like burned feathers?
What? Burned feathers? The chimney! I forgot to keep the fire up. They're coming down the chimney.
No!
Where's the oil?
On the shelf.
There they are, squeezing through the chimney. Stand back. Let me throw the oil on the coals. There, that did them.
Nat, I can't stand it.
Get me paper, wood, anything that'll burn. Quick, hurry. The charred bodies kept dropping down the chimney. I raked them to one side, but more came. I threw on the rest of the oil and piled papers on it, kindling, anything. The flames roared higher. More bodies. Oh, the stench was unbearable. I kept at it. Finally, they gave up. I went over to the basin. I was sick. Around 9 in the morning, the rustling ceased. I opened the door a crack. There were crushed birds deep around the house, but there was not a living bird in sight. The tide had gone out, and now was my chance to get food and fuel. I ran all the way to the farm. There was no smoke from the chimney. I came around the corner of the house and stopped. In the doorway, almost covered with dead birds, was Mr. and Mrs. Trigg. What was left of them. Beside him was his gun, beside her, broken umbrella. I loaded the two-seater with all the food that I could find, and enough for perhaps 3 days, and drove back to the cottage. I told Debbie the Triggs didn't need their car for a while, and they had told me to take it. She said nothing. And toward nightfall, the birds came back again. We sat by the fire and listened to the rustle as they crowded against the house. But this time there was a new sound. They brought up their heavier forces against us, the birds with the larger beaks. I could hear the sound of tiny bits of wood being torn away.
They'll stay till the tide turns. Then they'll leave. Then they'll come back again. And they'll keep coming back. Nat,
Yes?
the Triggs, they're dead, aren't they?
Yes.
We're all alone. It's strange. I feel closer to you than I've ever.
It should take something like this to bring... Debbie, you may be interested to know that right now I do not feel very superior.
Oh no, Nat. Oh, Nat. Nat, what do we do?
I don't know, Debbie. I do not know. I listened to the sound of this splintery wood, and I wondered how many million years of memory was stored in those little brains, behind the stabbing beaks and the piercing eyes, now giving them this instinct to destroy mankind with all the deft precision of machines. I switched on the radio. It was dead. I reached for the cigarettes. There was only one left in the packet. I lit it. I threw the empty packet on the fire and watched it burn.
Under the direction of Suzanne Frederickson, Whittier Community Theater has brought you The Birds by Daphne Du Maurier, specially adapted for radio by Robert Reif, starring Sherman H. Wiggs Jr. with Roxie Lee. Featured in the cast were Cleta Cohen, Stephen Sanborn, and Guy Van Empel. I'm your announcer, Guy Van Empel, wishing you a good evening.